it is uncertain waters for Indian students. But the rest of the panel essentially saying that let's not make too much of a hue and cry about this new visa development, because this is not signaling or singling out Indians particularly. It's just pure coincidence that so many Indians apply for these visas and are going to get affected. But this is a tightening of screws that's happened across the board.
True. I think Indians are going to be the first casualty in the grand scheme of things, primarily because we are one of the highest recipients of the H-1B visa. If you've heard the three other panelists, say what they have said, the summary that we can draw out from that is that the State Department is basically aiming at creating a much more controlled, a much more secure, and a much more domestically focused system in place. And the eventual casualty of this is going to be those Indians who are trying to apply for either tourist visas, business visas, or even student visas, or even the H-1B visas. We've got to remember that this third country application came into existence only during the COVID period, and it was only done to ensure that the consulates in India, specifically Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, Delhi, were not sort of overburdened as a consequence of those numbers of applications flying in from India, because India does apply a lot for these visas. And then, eventually, if you look at countries like, say, Thailand, UAE, or Germany, which has lesser number of applicants, it was done to essentially balance out that sort of applications. Now they're basically going into the pre-2020 norm. But the root cause of all of this is domestic politics. The domestic politics is basically looking at, driving out that sort of narrative that Indians are coming and taking away your jobs which you are not qualified to do, but yet the Indians are taking away those jobs. And which is why we are tightening the screws to ensure that, Indians do not get that sort of priority in our sort of country, and we can create mechanisms to ensure that they can be deterred. It's a very myopic and a very inward-looking policy that the Trump administration is basically looking at. And as a consequence, they're basically encouraging more sort of multipolarity to come into existence. I mean, the more inward you become as a country, the consequences, the other countries start conjuring up more sort of collaboration and corroboration between themselves, and that is what is going to happen. The decision around the tighter controls is typically driven because of this report that was presented by the US State Department, that 7.5% of these visas which were granted last year were basically overstays, which is why we sort of need to tighten those controls, Kabir.